Good afternoon. Welcome to Stand Up for Chico. I am with Lauren Kohler today, who's running for Chico City Council, and we are at Il Paisa Taco Truck on Walnut. Lauren, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me, you've got a wonderful plate of street tacos in front of you. Tell me about El Paisa, why it's your favorite, and what do you love about the street tacos?
These are some of my favorite street tacos in Chico. I got the spicy chicken tacos, unfortunately without cilantro because I'm allergic to it.
No!
So that's why it's missing. But I really love these street tacos, and it's right near the Butte Environmental Council office, which is really great. And that's another place that does some really amazing work in Chico. So it's also really close to my district, so you can like walk or bike from Chico State or from over near my house, which is really cool.
I agree. Okay, so let's talk about you a little. Tell me a little about, since this is the first time we're meeting, tell me what motivated you to run for council?
There were a lot of things. So I've lived in Chico my entire life, and I, really love this place. But in the past few years, I have worked really hard to advocate, particularly around housing and homelessness and better protections for renters. And even since the fire, I've seen this kind of lack of urgency around taking action around those items. Since the campfire, we still don't have enough affordable housing. We do have, Chico has some affordable housing being built, which is really exciting. It's still not going to be enough, unfortunately,
right.
But I always want to shout out good work that people are doing. But we don't have sanctioned campgrounds. We don't have a safe parking lot for folks who got burned out of the fire and are living in RVs. I also, don't see climate action being seen as a priority.
Right.
We do have some commissions and folks who are experts making recommendations, but we're not taking those recommendations into account with every decision that we make. So I have just seen, in a few words, I just feel that there is an urgency in the air, and we really need to start taking things seriously and start taking action as soon as possible.
Absolutely agree with you. Tell me what you hope to accomplish on the council.
So, I mentioned a couple of things. My priorities are solutions to our housing and homelessness crisis, real public safety, and climate resilience. Luckily, a lot of those kind of fit together. No decision that the city council makes is made in a vacuum. So every decision that we make about public safety or about housing is going to tie back into climate, and the decisions that we make about housing affect public safety. So everybody's like, what's your top priority? And I'm like, all of it. But, one action can make a huge difference. So I really want to focus on solutions to our homelessness crisis in a way that looks at, what can we do right now, today, tomorrow, to mobilize an emergency response, and how can we solve the root of the problem. And that's how I like to look at all problems. But we do have an emergency on our hands, so we desperately need a safe parking lot or multiple safe parking lots with, running water and services. We need sanctioned campgrounds with running water and restrooms and a low barrier shelter. And we need to push for climate smart, affordable housing development and, renter protections, particularly in the wake of COVID. And a lot of people have lower incomes than they did before. So we can't mitigate our homelessness crisis unless we are ensuring that people stay safely housed. In terms of real public safety, I want to look at building the infrastructure for proactive public safety. In my district, our streets have been declining for quite a while. There's a lot of places that just don't even have a sidewalk, like right outside people's apartments. So I want to focus on that. And there's a lot of different places where people cross the street very frequently that have no crosswalk. I know that I'll be crossing like West Sacramento and I'll kind of like look and have to sprint across, and that's just not safe. So making sure that we are creating the physical infrastructure for real public safety is important, and looking into where we can take the burden off of our police department and focus on ways to get more mental health services. Because if we are treating trauma and mental health crises as they are, it's not only less of a strain on our police department, but it's going to save us money in the long run.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Let me ask you. I think public health now more than ever is crucially important, and there's a huge mental health component that plays into that. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I actually have a little bit of a background in behavioral health. I have a psychology degree, and I worked for Butte County Behavioral Health in the prevention unit.
Oh, perfect.
Mental health is so interconnected with a lot of different things. Poverty affects mental health, job stress, worrying about the climate crisis are all really intertwined with mental health. But something that is really important is an adequate crisis response system. Butte County does have their mobile crisis team, and they're great, but they need way more support.
Yes.
So, partnering with them, as well as creating our own systems to respond to, mental health crises where the person really just needs a mental health intervention, not a police intervention. And it can be hard to tell which is which sometimes, which is why we need that, trained mental health response.
Absolutely. That was heartwarming to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that. You mentioned a word earlier that is a off camera, but that is a word that is often used but not often explained and not often well defined, but I think is crucially important now more than ever, that we're in a pandemic, and that we're looking at a economy that is going to take more than likely a long time to recover, certainly for communities such as ours. So let's talk about advocacy. What does advocacy mean to you, and how will you affect that on the city council?
So advocacy, my definition has kind of adjusted over the years. I started when I was still at Chico State. I was doing research in community psychology, and the biggest part of community psychology is, instead of kind of coming up with a problem that you see and coming up with a solution, you go out into the community and you're like, I think there's a problem here, or it can be super obvious that there's a problem. But instead of defining that, you ask the community, hey, what is your problem and what do you need to help solve it? And then you use that to inform policy. And that is something that I have tried to take into account with all of the advocacy that I've done so going out and asking people, hey, what do you need? And then just kind of repeating that over and over again to anybody who will listen to me. Like, I talked to these folks, whether it was, renters or unhoused folks, and saying, like, this is what they want. Like, I'm not just assuming that this is what people want, but, I actually went out and asked people. So that's something that I want to bring to the city council. And this is particularly important with our unhoused population and our renters. Chico is nearly 60% renter, and there is no formal advocacy body for them.
Say that again. Chico is what's our percentage of renters?
Nearly 60%. It was about 57% in 2017, and those are the most recent numbers I have, but it definitely has increased. So it's a lot.
Yes.
The national average, to put it in perspective, is about 34% renters. So it's really important that we have kind of a central advocacy body for renters, and also that we are getting input from our unhoused community on solutions for them. You know, we have our homeless opportunities plan, and I really like some of the ideas in there. But you know, we're really focusing on getting community input from folks who have houses. And it's really important to also get input from folks who do not have houses. You know, when we're making a plan that's going to affect a certain population, we need to check that plan with the folks that it's going to affect. So that is really important to me. So, and that's what advocacy means for me. It's when you go out and you listen to what people need, and then you fight for that, instead of just saying that you know what they need and you're gonna make it happen.
Yes, I think that is crucially important, and I think that we tend to make that fatal flaw of saying that we're advocating for something when we're really just directing what we think needs to happen. And I think that's an incredibly important distinction that you made, and I really love hearing that from you.
Thank you. I want to make, you know, every decision that I make with my moral principles guiding it, but with the input of my community, because I'm never going to pretend to always have the right answers, but I will always listen to community voices, because that is what your representative is supposed to do. They're supposed to be there to represent what you need and fight really hard to make that happen.
This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your calm, even tone that you bring to things, and the respectful manner that you address issues. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.